You're listening to a Skewed Orbit original podcast.
Time, weather, and always pass.
Sober Curious? We love to hear it. Not sure if you've heard, but I got sober on accident in 2018. It's a real shame she doesn't talk about it more. And even in 2018, the amount of voices that were available to us talking about sobriety or alcohol in any other way that wasn't specific to the AA program, there was like one or two voices. And now I'm just so grateful to see in such a short amount of time how many amazing creatives, artists, leader experts are coming out and really talking about the different spectrum that exists of our relationship with alcohol. Because it really, for some of us, yes, it is claiming the word alcoholic, it's claiming recovery. And for many of us, it's as simple as that was something I used to numb and I choose no longer to do that. And it's this sense of, sobriety by reclaiming ourselves, but it doesn't feel similar in the way of like an alcoholic. So really just having all of these voices available to us is a really, really big blessing. And whether you are on the beginning of your sober curious journey or what we really even cover in this episode, which is talking about even if like you have do I love you? Am I envious? For those of you that have like a pretty healthy relationship with alcohol, oh my gosh, what is that like? For those of you, there's even some stuff in here for you. So this is so great. And I am so just blown away that I was able to have this wonderful person on to speak with me. Today, we are talking to the Sober Sexpert, Tawny Lara. I'm so excited. She is a journalist, an author, and a former, just as she says, obnoxious, loud party girl. And she said that now she's choosing to be loud and obnoxious about sobriety and helping us in Sober Curious, kind of all of the things. So she has a book out called Dry Humping, which is all about helping us navigate being sober or sober curious in relationships and breakup in the bedroom. It's so juicy and so impactful. I'm so excited. Please enjoy this conversation with author Tawny Lara. I'm so excited. I really am. So thank you just so much for talking to a stranger for an hour, because we don't know each other at all, or like tangentially. We were not introduced through friends. I don't remember where I saw your book come up. Somebody had shared it and I was like, oh, I have to talk to her. I was like, I'm just so yeah, my whole body is excited to hear about your work and your journey and all of the things. So thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I mean, this is so exciting. I don't remember how we connected, but you followed me and then I followed you and I watched all, like, you have such great videos and your podcast is great. So I'm like, this is how people make friends these days. So I'm glad we're becoming friends.
Yeah, likewise. Also, congratulations. You had a very big week.
I did. This is my first interview since as a married woman.
Oh my goodness. She's given herself over to the state. You heard it here first. Married gal. No, but it was just so, I saw that had popped up and I'm like, and then you're like, oh, my friend's posting all the day. So I'm like, well, I'm going to be that person. And I went over to this other person who I don't know and followed her beautiful stories of this like super fun day that you and your husband had like through the city of New York. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, and thank you for following. And it's like, and for context, if people are like, "What is she talking about?" Um, we just did a courthouse wedding, and we wanted it to be very simple and just for us. A day just for us. And you have to have a witness. And so our dear friend, Katie Mack, who's a fellow, writer, actor, does all of the things. She graciously posted so much content from wedding day. So I was able, like, my friends and family who were able to follow along, like, they were there. So it was really cool that the internet lets us do that kind of stuff now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought that was so cool. I'm always just really well, I always tell people I identify as like a social misfit. So I always am attracted to people that are just super authentic, doing their thing, doing especially things that are like these big quote unquote milestones, and watching people take ownership over what I believe the true identity of like getting married, of deciding that you want to spend your life with somebody or spend some time with somebody. Everybody can define it differently. So I was just like super jazzed to follow along. So I was like, this is so punk rock and I'm into it and I
Yeah.
love it. So it
Oh,
was
I
so
love
cool.
that. It was a punk rock approach. And, um, you know, we were just like, God, planning a wedding. I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't have the money for that. And I don't want to go into debt for that. And like, we did a wedding should be what you want it to be, what you and your partner or partners want it to be. And we really focused on that instead of trying to please other people. We pleased ourselves. And it's, you know, I've been married for 2 whole days now, and I've got to say, we're, it's great.
You're like, I'm happy to report we're crushing it.
We are
No,
crushing married life.
I was like, I love that so much because yes, I feel very similar where it's like, if it's, I've gone to so many beautiful weddings. Oh, so beautiful, so beautiful. And I've walked away going, I have no idea who those people are. I don't know why. You know what I mean when I say that,
Yeah.
of like that there's fireworks and swans and like there's so much theatrics, which again, to each their own. But I really, really love when people infuse themselves, because I'm like, this is about you guys and your love. And so anyway, it was just really fun to watch, and congratulations. Okay, so you've written this book, Dry Humping, which I'll just tell you a little bit quickly of like, this is why I was attracted to you and your work. So I got sober. I'm a comedian and now a spiritual speaker. So a lot of my work kind of converges. It's the intersection essentially of like comedy and spiritual growth. And I've been a comedian my whole life. And then I got sober in 2018, and where you're now confronting all of the other parts of your life. So like I saw today, you were like, I think it was on Substack, and you had a post of like that you don't have to, you can go to parties this Halloween and not get hammered, basically, right? So it's reintroducing yourself and all of the different parts of yourself. And then when it came up to dating, I'm like, wait a minute. I don't think I've ever had sober sex with somebody. Like, it's different if I've been in a relationship and okay, and then even probably so it was like hungover sex, if I'm being perfectly honest, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
so, right? Like, it's like, oh, we're together, but like, we're together. We've been dating for however long, but we went to a party last night and now we're sleeping together this morning. So we're hungover and kind of whatever. Like, there's still that lack of like true connectedness. And so I just love so much that you've put this thing into the world where I was like, oh, that would have been like a Bible for me, and still obviously is so beneficial even now, still engaging and having sex and creating the relationship, that sexual relationship with my husband, and allowing it to grow and all those things. So that was really what made me just like, so where I was like, "Phew, I got to talk to that person." So I would really love to hear about, um, and because I know that you have done so much press for this book, so I don't want to like bore you of asking you the same questions that everyone else has asked you. So I would really love to hear though a little bit about your journey of what got you here, and then really like, how has it been birthing this thing that I'm assuming is also something that you wish existed, which is probably why you created it, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I so relate to everything you just said about, I've never dated without alcohol, never had sex without alcohol. So this this really is the guidebook, the Bible that I needed when I was newly sober and had no idea how to date, let alone have sex. Or, the book is also about how to have healthy communication in relationships. I wasn't even thinking about that. When I was newly sober, it was really just sex and dating. And I spent a lot of time making this book as inclusive as possible for, the book is structured like a relationship arc. So it starts with dating. Being single, dating, sex, um, coping with all of the shit you repressed because you were drinking. And then when that comes up, how do you deal with it? Um, and Also, there's a chapter about breakups, about sober breakups. There's chapters about mindful communications, mindful communication once you're actually in a relationship. So, it's not just for single people, like it's for all across the spectrum of relationships. Um, and then on that note, it's also like you and I are sober, but there's people that still drink that are really liking this book because they're wanting to just be more intentional with their romantic lives, which is honestly such a compliment. If someone still drinks alcohol and tells me that this book has helped them, then like I feel like I've done my job, to make it as
Totally.
inclusive as possible. Yeah. But I quit drinking November 30th of 2015. And I before that, I lived the very stereotypical party girl bartender life. Just picture the, girl dancing on a bar, woo, like just living, doing that shit. And my whole identity was around the bar. If I wasn't bartending, I was drinking on the other side of the bar. All of my relationships were seemingly alcohol based. I mean, friendships, romantic relationships, fuck buddies. I mean, it was just, I created this little boozy bubble for myself. And I don't, this is, I was living in Waco, Texas at the time. That's where I grew up. And I don't know that I ever would have gotten sober if I did not relocate to New York City to pursue writing and really just, I came here to grow as a person and be a writer in New York, and I got sober 3 months after I moved here, which was just like not the plan at all. Um, but getting into the New York City writers scene, I met people who drank normally. I met people who had one or two glasses of wine and were content with that, where I was at the bar ordering shots and people were like, what are you doing? Like, it's a Tuesday, we're just having a drink. And so that was really the first time that I looked at my relationship with alcohol like from a zoomed out lens. Um, and so like I think it's important to share that of like how important community is and the people that you surround yourself with. For like I said, for me, I was hanging out with other bartenders and partiers. So I moved to New York and I surrounded myself with other writers and found my own sober community here. So it's like, none of this happens in a vacuum, like getting sober, doing stand up, writing a book, whatever it is. It really does take a village and a community to bring all of this to life. So I definitely wanted to spotlight that as well.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you said that. And I also really love that it was almost like I know there's many other factors that play into us leaving alcohol. Obviously, that's like a major, like it's literally a rebirth. um, but so much that like kind of this dream and aspirational version of like your life and what you wanted to do was the thing that like called you forward, where it was like you're so close, like keep coming, is
Yeah.
just like is a really beautiful, like cool thing. um yeah, the it's always so interesting where, because for me, like my drinking was like certainly out of control, but I was not like, oh, I'm not like when I quit, people were like, from what? Like, where a
Yeah.
lot of my drinking, it was very hidden. It was very like, oh, I'm going to stay home tonight and like, oh, I'm redecorating my living room. But then I black out by 11 p.m. because I've had, however many IPAs or whatever. So the way in which that kind of comes into play. And yeah, I feel like similarly when I was really starting to look around and it's like, oh, not everybody does this or not everybody is like
Yeah.
okay with this. And then really finding, I think, those communities and those people, because especially like for me, where you're talking about, I mean, I've worked in, I mean, how many restaurants, how many bars have I been behind,
Mm.
all the same things. But comedy is very much that. I mean, now there's a lot more people that are sober curious. Like, I think that's just kind of like washing over us a little bit as a society, is like more of us are talking about these things. but it's still just so entrenched. Like, I mean, the fact that
Yes.
it is still so powerful to have voices like yours that are offering things like, here are alternatives or way to take care of yourself, like this Halloween, so you don't have to, you can still go out and have fun and, you know, not come home blacked out. We clearly still have work to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so interesting to me. So what was, I don't need like what was the moment before where you're like, I'm done with this, but meaning like what were kind of those conversations that you were having with yourself? Because it does feel like fish out of water when you're like, wait a minute, they don't do this thing and they don't do like,
Yeah.
what was that processing like? Because if you had just
Yes.
moved to New York, like, did you have like long term like homies or friends there where like there was at least some people, or everything was kind of new?
I mean, everything was brand new. I mean, I moved here, I bought a one-way ticket and I just like figured shit out. I didn't know anyone. I was 29. It was in my Saturn return. My hair was hot pink. And I was like, I mean, it was stereotypical Saturn return shit of like, I'm gonna make a big lifestyle change. And I just bought a one-way ticket to New York City. But I figured it out. And it's like my friends back home thought I was insane. But as I'm sure you know, like this is just what people do. They move to New York or LA and they figure it out.
Yeah.
I did, you know. Um, I think that approach really worked for me because I needed to leave the bar scene. I don't know that like I said, I don't think I would have gotten sober if I was still like bartending in Waco, Texas. I needed to surround myself with artists and writers and creative people, and just I needed to be in a new place. Again, this was getting sober was not the plan. I moved here strictly just to write, but finding myself, finding my own identity outside of my family, outside of Texas, outside of just everything that I knew was huge. It was like a significant part of getting to the point of where I realized, okay, I don't drink normally. This is not a healthy habit. These are not healthy behaviors. And, you know, I'd say like I flirted with sobriety on and off. Like I would take a week off, a month off. This is before like now we have dry months and lots of people do that. But this was back then these breaks were just to prove to myself that I didn't have a drinking problem.
Of
Like,
course.
well, I
Yeah.
went a month without alcohol, so I don't have a problem. Um, we tell ourselves so many things to to
Uh-huh.
keep drinking, right? Um, so I mean, I was my quote unquote rock bottom final like come to Jesus moment. I'm sitting at a pub in Soho at Finelli's, sitting in a pub having beers with some friends, talking about how I don't have enough time to write. And it just clicked. I left the pub and I realized I just spent 4 hours drinking beer, talking about how I don't have time to write. And it just
Mm.
something like on the walk home, on the walk to my train, I was like, maybe there's something there. You know, maybe alcohol is getting in the way of my creativity in some way. So again, it's 2015. We didn't even have the term sober curious yet, but that's definitely what I was. I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm not going to drink. And it was right before my 30th birthday. So I decided to start a blog that I called Sobriety Party. And the blog held me accountable to write and to not drink. So it was just a year-long social experiment of like, I'm not going to drink for my 30th year. That was it. You know, I was just going to do a year away from alcohol. And then pretty quickly I got maybe about 6 months in, you know, started therapy. I started to really unpack my relationship with alcohol. I connected with incredible, mostly women, sober women online who were doing a similar thing. They didn't want to go to AA, but they're questioning their relationship with alcohol publicly. It's very common now. We see a lot of people doing this on social media now. But back then there was maybe a handful of us who were doing this, you know, and um, so earlier, like I said, I credit community is everything. And I would not be almost 8 years alcohol free today without finding like literally the hashtag sober curious community. Completely changed my life. I met other creative sober people And it's just been a truly wild journey. And, spoiler alert, it clearly, alcohol really was getting in the way of my creativity. It really, like, I've never written more. I have a podcast on my book. I mean, there's so much stuff. And literally the only thing I did was remove alcohol from my life. And I did, obviously, there's a lot of work that goes into that, but that one decision to remove alcohol really was the impetus to everything I have today.
Yep. I feel like we
You're like, I know.
but it's also like, it's such a powerful and true statement. I feel like it could be like, well, thanks for coming on the podcast, like,
yeah, great talk.
you know what I mean? Like, what else? Like, it's just so profound. I think those simple changes where, like, in theory, right? Like, quitting alcohol, not drinking alcohol, removing it is just removing one substance. Like, in theory, it's
Mm-hmm.
such a simple idea. And I think even for a lot of us who fall under the camp of whether it's sober curious or like just booze free, where it was like, I'm just removing this thing that I no longer need. And obviously there is a lot of like crossover language, I think, between people who identify as an alcoholic, someone who's in recovery from alcohol, and those of us that had drinking problems, people had issues with alcohol. But so it is very complex, but it's such a simple thing. Because I remember, similarly, my joke is always that I got sober on accident, because
Mm-hmm.
I was living with somebody, and then I mean, my whole life was just on the wrong track. I mean, I was so far down the road from where I wasn't supposed to be. But so he breaks up with me, and then we had to live together for like 50 days or something. And I'm like, well, certainly I'm not going to do this. Like, I remember that's when I was still smoking cigarettes, and I'm just chain smoking American Spirits, hoping that's somehow going to fix the way I feel. And then this like thought came up, and it was like, or what if like we do this one differently? And it was just that sentence, having no idea that would like then like put all of this stuff in motion to send me like the complete opposite way. But the true simplicity of that, and then again, yes, that choosing of like, okay, therapy and unpacking this, and then
Yeah.
this huge like beast of creativity, where I feel like, it's what I'm curious to hear from you as well, where like I still feel like I'm in this place of the more internal work I do with other aspects of my life, I'm clearing out more and more space, as I define it, in my body for creativity, for
Yes.
love, for compassion, for community, and where those things are just naturally showing up in abundant ways. So I'm actually still in this process now, because I feel like I'm in kind of this next level of my life and what I'm doing, where I'm kind of really learning how to yield and shape these creative ideas and all that. So I'm just curious to hear from you too. Like, did you have this kind of sense of like, whoa? Because I'm assuming that you've always written, or you had journals and you wrote different things. And like, I'm guessing since you were like 6 years old, like this is just such a part of you. But now really hearing that like voice, that muse, that part of yourself, and bringing it in, asking it, what does it want to tell you? Like, what has building that relationship been like for you?
Yeah, I love this question because it really feels like when I quit drinking, I was reunited with my younger self
Yeah.
in this weird way. And like behind me, these are articles that I wrote for my local newspaper when I was 14 years old.
Mm.
I was, again, living in Waco, Texas, writing about same-sex marriage and legalizing weed and like very edgy stuff for Waco, Texas 2000. Probably still edgy for Waco today,
Yeah.
honestly. Um, but I was at 14 when I was writing about this stuff and really finding my voice as a writer and doing the morning announcements at school. And like, I was really on a good trajectory. And then, as many of us know, life happens. And I found drugs and alcohol to cope with what I now know as undiagnosed anxiety and PTSD and depression. I didn't have any of these words back then, but I knew that I felt numb when I used these substances. Um, And so really when I started self-medicating on a regular basis, I wasn't writing very much. So, and that was for like 14, 15 years until, age 29. And I started to really take my writing seriously again. And it feels like it just came back. It really was kind of like riding a bike of like, I I have these things to say. I have a voice. Like I know how to articulate the way that I feel. I just wasn't letting myself. It's not that I wasn't letting myself. I just wasn't in a headspace to even think about being creative. I was just trying to escape reality. Whereas now I'm like so entrenched and plugged in to reality that it's I guess just easier to channel the stuff that you're talking about. And I'm also extremely online. So there's as I'm sure you can relate, there's so much going on right now, and I like to put my spin on the liquid courage angle, which is really what this book is about. It's about, yes, it's sober sex and dating, but it's about liquid courage. It's about the role alcohol plays in sex dating and relationships and just in life, relying on this thing to get you through the tough times, to get you through, to make you feel more confident in bed, anything like that. That, like, again, 14-year-old me was really leaning on drugs and alcohol to get through stuff. And now I just, I say that like I was a loud, obnoxious party girl. So I'm going to be a loud, obnoxious, sober girl. I will shout from the rooftops the benefits of even just evaluating your relationship with alcohol. You don't even have to quit drinking, just do a dry month. And I do a really commit to doing a dry month and be present, talk to your therapist about the feelings that are coming up. It can really have a significant effect on you if you can just get present with how you drink.
I love that. I love that so much because it's also, when you talk about we drink to numb, and well, it works. It's really good. It works so well that it will numb out every other part of your life, right? That's the thing where it was like, I think I still thought that I'm like, well, I'm still doing a little stand up, or oh, I'm still doing this. Like, and I look back at like the jokes or the things that I was saying, and they're funny, but I'm not saying anything because I had
Mm,
numbed myself out so much that I had no idea how I viewed the world. And I had gotten so comfortable just people pleasing and being who everybody else told me that I was, that I had no idea. And so the amount of gratitude that I have towards my creative voice is like the true, this sounds so dramatic, but musical theater major, what can you do? The reverence that I have towards my creative self is as just so vast because
mm,
it still was there even though every fiber of my being was trying to numb it out. That it was
yeah.
still the part of me that was like, we're going to get on stage tonight and we're going to talk about this thing. We're going to, like, we're going to do this sketch. We're going to go to Warner Brothers for this audition. Like, I mean, I've done a lot of recovery and still am of the sadness that I feel for showing up to those things numb and thinking that I was really being of service to myself. Um, and that I think, you talk about,
Mm,
well, and now, I went from loud, obnoxious, drunk girl to now I'm going to be the loud, obnoxious, sober girl. That's how I feel about my creativity now. Like when people are like, I don't know, like you have 2 kids and all these businesses, like how are you just so present and showing up? And I'm like, it's not for future me. In fact, it's for past versions of me because she wasn't in a position to show up fully. She wasn't in a position to express herself fully. And so I feel like now, because every step of me has done that internal work every day. And as you know, there are days that we're tired and we want to tap out. And wow, was drinking an IPA easier than having an honest conversation with my husband? Like it's like I talk about that in my stand up. I'm like, I understand why people numb out. And I'm like, because when I got sober, I had yoga memberships. I was doing silent
yes.
retreats. Like my to-do list just got so much longer, So it's like, I get it. So I just appreciate hearing so much of that. And especially when you talk about really reconnecting with your inner child in that way and the part of you that just knew like, this is what I'm here to do. I'm here to wake
Yeah.
up Waco, Texas, like I am here, like wake up Waco. Like that's what I'm here to do. And I also, I mean, so many of us, right after having some sense of recovery, that's what we share about, right? Life is about taking what happens to us, hopefully alchemizing it, and that becomes our medicine for the
Mm.
world. But it still is very like funny to me where it was like the thing that you removed in order to be able to write is now the thing where you're like, well, this is the thing that I'm going to write about of
Yeah, I
encouraging
know. And
people.
I'm so aware of that irony every single day of like it's I had to remove alcohol to find my voice as a writer and my voice as a writer is reminding people they don't need alcohol. So I'm like it's funny. Like that's just it is what it is. But it's also like as I'm sure that you've learned on your own journey is like yes, it's alcohol, but it's when you zoom out, it's mental health, it's self-esteem, it's confidence, it's sexual liberation, it's like it's communication skills. I mean, alcohol for me, and it sounds like for you, it was just this default thing that was easier. And then when you decide you no longer want to live life on default mode, then you figure the rest of your shit out. So for me, it was like, I guess pun intended here, like getting sober really was like getting rid of alcohol really was the gateway drug to figuring out who the fuck I am.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, say it again for louder for the people in the back. I I feel that so much where and that was what I was talking about earlier where it was like it's actually very simple the idea of removing alcohol and then do here comes this whole list of like oh like for me it's like oh I felt abandoned in this way or oh I didn't feel good enough this way and a lot of it was really low self-esteem stuff that I'm still unraveling and unpacking and letting go of because I love this kind of relationship between the idea of like liquid courage and your actual courage where it's like
Hmm.
isn't it interesting that like you think that you had this courage because you were drinking when in reality like that still is a part of you because it is the part of
Yeah.
you right they what's the terrible saying it's like there's a lot of lies in a bottle of beer but a lot of truth in an empty one because people speak their truth and so that's always something too where people I'm like, but that a lot of I mean, there's a lot of the toxic part that obviously is not us and we don't want to associate, but the ability to like to be loud, to be present, to want to be playful in bed, like all of these things, it's like, well, that is you because you're probably seeking in some ways this substance or whatever that substance is for you in order to like have this sense of permission that now it's okay to do
Yeah.
this thing. And I think that's a lot of the work too of where I'm like, well, I liked feeling like I could talk to anybody and I liked feeling like I belonged. So why can't we just decide that we do like people and we do like talking to people and
Hmm.
we do belong? Like we can also just decide to do that too. And then also never be hungover. So it
Yes.
seems like a pretty good win.
Well, and that's such a good point. I mean, that is the default that we're talking about here is like alcohol is the shortcut. Like if you want to feel more confident within 2 seconds, you can take a shot of tequila. Like that is an option, you know? But if you want to actually build real confidence, you have to work on your shit. And there is no shortcut there. If there is, I would love I'm open to, I'm listening if you have found a real shortcut, but I don't think there is. um it really is doing the work, it's going to therapy, finding a support group, journaling, like really unpacking your for me my childhood traumas and what led me to relying on alcohol instead of building actual courage. And in the book, I talk about how in Dumbo, he thought he needed that magical feather to fly, and then he could fly when he didn't have the feather, and it like he was able to fly the whole time. He just thought he needed this thing, and I so relate to that. Like I really thought that I needed alcohol to be more confident in the bedroom, to be more confident on dates, to be more flirtatious, to handle being around my family, to all of this life stuff that's going to happen. I thought that I needed this thing to get me through it when I actually just needed I needed tools. I needed to address my mental
Mm.
health. And once you figure your shit out, alcohol really does become less appealing. And at this point, I probably could have a beer, because like I figured out why I've self-medicated. But there's like no reason I don't feel called to it. Like there's so many great non-alcoholic beers, and I don't think I'm missing anything by not drinking. But it's like you said, in theory, it really is a simple switch of like, I'm not going to rely on alcohol anymore. But behind that switch, it is a significant amount of work. And I understand why people get discouraged or they go back to drinking or they give up on therapy because it's hard to deal with your shit. It is fucking hard, man. Um, but it sounds like you and I working on ourselves has led to this just vast amount of creativity and these new friend groups and like just work relationships and just romantic relationships, like
Yeah.
I don't think there's a shortcut to that. I think you have to do it.
Yeah. But that's why, like I said, I was so attracted to folks like you that where it's like I was speaking with somebody on the podcast recently too, where I was like, I think the other reason where I was like, please, if you're interested, come and talk to me, because I'm like, oh, I believe you. Like, I know that you have done this work, that this is real to you, that there's real weight there when you share what it is that you're doing, what you've worked through, and then these beautiful things that you've found, because that's something, I think for me, like I said, this intersection of comedy and spiritual growth, as I define it, or overall well-being, right, is for that thing where it's like, it doesn't have to just be traumatizing sessions with our therapist. Yes, there are those. There's
Hmm.
going to be those big breakthroughs where you're like, it just is so difficult to come face to face with the ways that we have held ourselves back, the way we have felt held back, our true feelings towards our parents. Like, all of these things are major, but they're still there whether we choose to address them or not. And the true
Yeah.
freedom comes from being willing to look at them, because then you have, like I said, what you just said so beautifully, of this abundance, this freedom of everything that comes in for us. And then the thing that the place I'm in now, which is now having this sense of um gratitude. That doesn't always mean that I'm happy about it, but I have
Yeah.
gratitude for the things that I was avoiding for so long. That I can now see that if I choose to, and I do, I choose to allow them to be the thing that's going to bring me to the next thing, that's going to bring more abundance, that's going to push me to the next
Hmm.
thing. And that's why I am just so grateful for people like you being out there and sharing what you do, and then also like being fucking cool, right? Like, I feel like for so long, that's the other thing where it was like the only, like mental health, it was all just, for so long was just like psychiatrists or like Ritalin. Like, that was all, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, those
that was,
those are your options.
yeah, that was it. And now just seeing all of these amazing people out there so authentically sharing what this experience has been for them is, I always tell people, I'm like, my voice is here for all of the social misfits, all of us that have
Mhm.
felt this sense of, well, I don't fit here and I don't fit here and I don't fit here, but I am good enough to be a chameleon and figure out how to fit into all of
Yeah.
those places. And then it's really allowing us, the misfits that have done this work, to unravel those things and show for other people, like, it's totally cool to like be punk rock and do it your way and figure out what you want to do and like and figure it out. So I love that so much. Okay, so you've written this book, which, by the way, it took me so long, which this is so embarrassing, where it's like, oh, Dry Humping. First of all, hilarious. I love this pun. I love this pun for us, because I was just so excited about the book. And then I was like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious. So so good, so good. When do you feel like, okay, so you're in this journey, you get sober, you're having this like beautiful community, and I love that you've so graciously been very clear to be like, this community is also so much of what enabled me the strength to, and the support to do all these things, because I think community is so vital. So when in this journey where you're like, fuck yeah, this is the book I'm writing? Or was this a thing like you wrote and like sat down in 2 days and you got it out? What was that process like?
I started writing about sober sex and dating just at like on my blog and on social media. And I realized just like as a journalist, there's not a lot of resources for this. So I I just it's proper millennial fashion. I became that resource, you know. Um and I'm also very aware that like, the internet calls me the sober sexpert. I'm very aware that the expertise that I bring to this conversation is journalistic research and personal experience.
Mm.
And I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not a sex educator. I'm not a sex therapist. But I'm very interested in these intersections. So the book is written from a journalistic perspective. Like it's not the Tawny story. You see my story throughout, but I've interviewed dozens of people, sober curious, people who still drink, the professionals that I was just talking about. I went to LA and interviewed sober porn stars. Like I wanted to get as diverse of a book as possible, you know? So just organically, I've just done a lot of this research. And I knew that I wanted to write a book about sober sex and dating. I actually tried to write it as a memoir for years,
Mm.
and it didn't feel right. But once I pulled myself out of the story and wrote about it from more of an objective perspective, with my story kind of like we as the thread, um, that's when it all started to come together. And, I had like probably half a dozen book proposal Google Docs
Yeah,
on my computer.
of course.
Um, and, but like, this is the one that I figured out the angle. I hired a writing coach to help me really refine what I wanted to say. And that's how then I got my literary agent. Then I got the book deal. And then it really came together from there. Um, but like I essentially I wrote this book in 3 months, but there's no other topic I could write a book about in that short of time, because it's been 8 years of research that let me write a book in 3 months.
I love that. And I love just hearing other creatives talk about the full creative process, because I think sometimes when people are really beginning to tap into theirs, they're like, oh, well, this should be happening like very quickly, right? And it's like, well, sometimes, but most of the time, that's not it. We have to really, even for those of us, like it sounds like you self identified as a writer your whole life, right? And similarly, I feel like I've self identified as like a comedic performer my whole life, but now really massaging and figuring out how do I really want to take all of these ideas and present them. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So the book is out, and what I always I have two questions. And I because one, I always have to like give a little bit of a precursor, because I don't like when people are like, okay, so what's next? It's like, dude, I just spent like I'm still
Yeah.
enjoying this thing. So that isn't the intention of the question. The question is more like an actual question from Rachel Force, just wondering, which is like, do you feel like, is there something new that you kind of know is starting to call your attention? Or do you really feel like you're like, I'm still kind of like in this and just seeing where it takes me?
And I mean, it's a little bit of both. I go on my book tour in November. November is actually going to be a really big month. So, I'm doing a book tour in November. I'm doing LA, DC, and Boston, and then I do a lot of New York events. So, and then my husband, love saying husband, he and I are launching a non-alcoholic drink in a couple weeks, which we
Yes.
are very excited about. So he's also sober, and he was a sommelier, so he's very well trained in beverage.
Yeah.
Um, and so and one of his hobbies when he got sober was he got really into fermentation. He started to make, he had a bunch of wine just because he was a sommelier, and like good wine,
Yeah.
so he read an article about how to make vinegar, started making vinegar. So he has an artisanal vinegar line called Sour Humanoid. It's for
Mm,
cooking.
how
Um,
cool.
so yeah, so we have a vinegar line. And then one of my pandemic hobbies was getting into herbalism. And so this drink is called Parentheses. And it's a mix of both of our passions of, his for fermentation and mine for herbs. And so it's two drinks. It's called Parentheses because it's before and after.
Yeah.
um, and so it's a before drink, and we use herbs that are traditionally designed to, not designed, they're herbs. The herbs that are traditionally used to stimulate your senses. And the after drink is herbs that are traditionally used to calm the senses, calm the nerves. So it's, like I would say like a non-alcoholic aperitif and digestif.
Yeah.
And it's a vinegar based botanical beverage. And as someone who's been in the sober and non-alcoholic drink space for many years, I know there's nothing like this. There's other botanical beverages, but nothing vinegar based. And the vinegar really kind of packs a punch, which we didn't realize we missed until we started
Mm.
making this drink. Um, so yeah, so that comes out in a couple weeks. We're really excited about that.
That's so exciting. I remembered that because you must have done an event or something, and I remember seeing it, and I was like, "Oh, that's so fucking cool." Yeah, I think congratulations, that's so cool, and B, I am just so attracted to that because that's somebody for me where even now where if folks who don't really know me and then they find out I don't drink and then of course it's like oh, can I drink around you, which is always so kind to hear from somebody who's 4 drinks in. um no judgment, just jokes, okay, no judgment, just jokes. But I'm always very gracious of like, it's okay, I don't think tonight or you're not going to be the reason I relapse, don't worry about it. I appreciate it though. uh but I do always find I remind people of like, I think I did, obviously I did like that alcohol was numbing, but it really is more of like the social armor of, oh, I have a drink so we can cheers, how are you, like there's kind of this easy entryway of, oh, what are you drinking, especially at networking events and things like that, a way to kind of
Yeah.
show your personality. And so I'm always really reminding people, even folks that do drink but are, like you said, are wanting to be more intentional with their relationship with alcohol, I'm always reminding them that there's lots of different ways. Like, I'll tell you what, I'm not embarrassed to say it, I love a good NA Heineken. I really do.
Hmm.
And I was never a Heineken gal, but they've got a good NA. So I'm really, really excited for this, and how cool. And so, okay, so you've got that going on. You have all of these different events that you do in New York, and then the book tour kicks off in November. So my last question, and this is just something that I always ask everybody. So again, in the spirit of our younger selves, of these misfit artists, what do you feel like in this journey of, as I define it, of kind of reclaiming your creativity and those parts of yourself, what are you the most proud of, or what part of that makes you the most excited that you're fully embodying again?
Ooh, what a question. I mean, obviously, it just feels fucking awesome to have a book in my hands that I wrote. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just something that I really never thought I could make happen.
Hmm.
Writing a book is one thing, publishing a book is a whole other thing, and you're in the arts, you get it. Um, so just going through the publishing process, I am very proud of myself for sticking it out because it's fucking hard. Um, but like I will share the best piece of writing advice that I've ever received that got me to this point
Ooh.
is Ruth Dannon. She's a poet. She taught a writing class that I took when I first moved to New York. She said to let yourself write bad.
Hmm.
And that advice gave me permission to just get words out of my head and onto the page. Without that writing advice, I would not have a book. I would not have a newsletter. I would not have any of the things that I have. And that, I think you can apply that advice to whatever creative work that you're in, like it you have to just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks and don't edit in your head. Like really just get some stuff down. And because you can always edit later. You cannot edit a blank page. So shout out to Ruth Dannon. Let yourself write bad. Just there would be no dry humping without it.
I love that. I love that so much. Obviously, we are going to continue to support you, both me, the podcast, my team, all of our listeners now, those that may not be familiar with your work yet, or they're going to be like, LaForce, you've been sleeping on it. We've been following her for years. We will have all of your links and all of that available every place that this is. But is there anything that you, when the tour, tell us about the tour, when that kicks off, and any other links of where we can find you?
Yeah, I think that the best way to stay in touch is check me out on Instagram and Substack, my weekly newsletter. It's also it's a advice column. People submit questions to me about alcohol-free relationships and dating. So that could be sexual, romantic relationships. It could be work relationships, family dynamics. It's about the role alcohol plays in these interpersonal relationships. And then social media on Instagram, that's, you'll see all the flyers for all of my upcoming events. I'll be in LA November 15th and DC November 30th, which marks I'm really excited for the DC event because that is my 8 years, my 8th so birthday. So I'm excited to have a book party and really celebrate then. And yeah, just lots of New York events. So you can stay up to date with all of that.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me, and congratulations again on being married. What a big thing. You've got this amazing book that's out. So much more. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You guys, can you hear it in my voice when I get to talk to people? And especially people who are having any sort of like language or conversation around like reclaiming their inner child or that spark, I just feel my like 5th grade self all over again, connecting with other people and their inner child and being like, isn't it so cool that we like to make things? So again, just my social misfit heart just gets so lit up by it. And I'm so grateful that you were all able to listen to this. And as Tawny knows, we spoke briefly after the podcast. I said, you will definitely be seeing me again. So we may or may not be putting into the works an event together, maybe a sober curious salon in New York City, which would just light up every part of my being. Oh my gosh, especially my younger self that just, of course, thought that I would be this, performer and just this like living in New York and like bringing a backpack because like I'm leaving the house and I won't be home until dark, and just so romantic. So please go and find Tawny's work. I love so much when she shared about, kind of taking her story into the background a little bit more in this book and really sharing from all of these different voices. You guys know, I think that is so powerful, is hearing the inner truths of all sorts of people, specifically people who live and do not look the way that you live and look, I think is so valuable and important, because you will find, as you know, I have said it nauseum, that the most universal truths are hidden in the specificity of our lives. So please go and find Tawny. Her book is in my Amazon cart over on Instagram. So you can find that. Definitely hit all of those links and follow along. You guys know I'm going to say it, and I'm going to keep saying it because I have analytics on this podcast, which means I know how many of you are listening to it. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of you. And those numbers have not gone all the way over to YouTube. And I know you're thinking, well, Rachel, because I listened to this and then I'm really thinking about it. Please, you guys, I only get to do as much as the follows will let me. And do I think it's bullshit? Of course I do. But I'm not here to change the world in that way. Okay. I can only do this part. So I would love so much. Please go over to YouTube and subscribe to the Rachel LaForce Show over on that page. I would be so grateful for that. And again, there's so many like fun, good tidbits. I do a lot of card reads and many intuitive readings over there too. So if you're really here for a lot of the spiritual feedback, you're going to find so much of that on my YouTube. There's just a lot more content that I can offer and put out a lot more freely. than on Instagram or TikTok, because the algorithm gods shine upon us a little bit brighter over on the YouTubes. So there you go. That's it. That's all I've got for you. Coming up that I have the holiday Soul Salon happening here at Phoenix and Dragon Bookstore in Sandy Springs. That is happening bi-weekly on Mondays. That is at 7:30 p.m. here in Atlanta, Georgia. So you can go over to my link in bio. You can also go over to rachelforce.com live, hit that drop down and book any and all of those events. I would absolutely love to have you. We're going to be doing different spiritual modalities, group and like community service and meeting. We're creating a gift tree. You go, LaForce, what's a gift tree? I would love to tell you. We're going to have a physical tree that's up, and you get to make your own ornament that is specializing and says, what is your gift? What do you want to offer to the world? And we're going to put them all on the tree. And our last event together, we're going to light that baby on fire. Not like Burning Man. I'm not going to burn it down, but we're just going to turn on the little light skis, light her up. As a symbolic representation of our ability that when we all light up our inner flame, we can go out into the world and light this shit on fire. You know what I mean? Corny or not, it's profound and impactful. So get on board. Okay. All right. Check that out. Also, if you're in the Atlanta area, I'm going to be doing some stand-up. We are kicking off the Moms Off-Duty tour that we're going to be doing. It's all moms that are very funny, that are comics here local to Atlanta. That kicks off at Atlanta Utility Works November 18th. That will sell out. So get your tickets. Again, all of that available at rachelleforce.com. That's it for me. Wherever you are, I see you. It sounds so just, this is how it sounds, but it's true. I am holding space for you, and I know wherever you are in your journey, God dang, is it not easy? But when we are here together and knowing that each of us are doing the work, I hope that will continue to light lamps for you so you can continue to uncover yourself and just give us what you got, baby. We need you. All right. Tune out. Tune in. Love you, mean it.
Time, weather, and always pass.